Any King Arthur fans in the house? That's what I thought. The Once and Future King first came to my attention when I watched X-Men 2. How you say? Well, it's the book that Magneto's reading when he's sitting in the plastic prison. Uh, it's actually a first edition of that book, by the way. That cover, on it. So immediately I'm thinking, what is this about? Because I had no idea what this was, the Once and Future King. And then I look it up, and I'm like, oh hell, it's a King Arthur story. Like I've read. At that point, I think I had read the Mort Arthur, or at least a portion of it. We were given like the first, I mean, the last few chapters of the that book to read, like Arthur's death and whatnot. So, so I get to researching it. I'm like, wait, this is what the Sword and the Stone was based off of. At least the first book of Once the Future King, because it's split into I think four books. And Sword and the Stone is the first book, of course, because it's Arthur's early days. You know, when he's living with his foster father Hector and his foster brother Kay, and they call him the Wart. You know, just like in the movie. And so the story starts in the final years of the rule of King Uther Pendragon. The first part, Sword in the Stone, chronicles Arthur's upbringing by his foster father, Sir Ector, his rivalry and friendship with his foster brother, Kay, who uh, Arthur fans will know that becomes one of Arthur's most trusted knights later on, and his initial training by Merlyn, a wizard who lives through time backwards, just like in the movie. Thinking that it's, past, present, future, whatever. Uh, Known as, yeah, he knows the boy's destiny, teaches Arthur, known as Wart, what it means to be a good king by turning him into various kinds of animals: fish, hawk, ant, goose, and badger. Uh, I don't think he turned him into a squirrel like in the movie, but yeah, that was a Disney choice. Each of the transformations is meant to teach Wart a lesson which will prepare him for his future life. Merlin insists in Arthur the concept that the only justifiable reason for war is to prevent another from going to war, and that contemporary human governments and powerful people exemplify the worst aspects of the rule of might. White revised the original Sword in the Stone heavily for the four-part book in 1958. So he took out the wizard's duel between Merlin and Madame Mim that the Disney recovered in the movie. I don't. So I guess Disney read the original version before it was revised. Disney was reading a lot when he was young, so this must have come to his attention when he was young, and he read that version with Madame Mim and really took to it. The adventure with T. Natrix the snake and the episode with the giant Galapagos. I'm wondering if you can find this original version somewhere. I don't know. The first of those was replaced with the adventure of the ants. In the Wart's adventure with Merlin's owl Archimedes, the boy Arthur becomes a wild goose instead of visiting the goddess Athena. In the adventure with Robin Hood in the original book, okay, Robin Hood was oftentimes um, a guest star in Arthur stories, or Arthur adjacent stories like Ivanhoe. Ivanhoe was a knight. Uh, I think he was in Arthur's court. I can't remember. I think he was. But I remember he appeared in the Robin Hood game, the PS2 game, and so yeah, there was a lot of crossover between Robin Hood and King Arthur because supposedly they were around the same time. Uh, there's cannibals in the original script. Uh, Skyapod, I don't know what that is. In the 1958 version, the boys lead an attack on Morgan Le Fay's castle chariot, and Kay kills a griffin. You see griffins in the Merlin miniseries with Sam Neill. Like Like, Griffins attack Arthur, and they fend him off. The revisions reflect White's preoccupation with political questions in The Once and Future King, and generally give the first part of the work a more adult flavor. So I might be jumping around because I've seen a lot of versions of King Arthur's story. I've seen the one with Keira Knightley. I've seen uh, Excalibur. That's one of my favorite versions because it's really close to Le Morte d'Arthur, which I think is the definitive version of the King Arthur story. Which this version is loosely based off of. But I really wanted to cover this version because it's one people are probably most familiar with. The animated Disney version is based off of this. So in part two, the Queen of Air and Darkness, that's a reference to Arthur's half sister Queen Morgause. That's what she's known as in this, but it's Morgan Le Fay. White sets the stage for Arthur's demise by introducing the Orkney clan and detailing Arthur's seduction by their mother, his half sister Queen Morgause. While the young king suppresses initial rebellions, Merlin leads him to envision a means of harnessing potentially destructive might for the cause of right, the chivalric order of the Round Table. The third part, the ill-made knight, that's about Lancelot, shifts focus from King Arthur to the story of Sir Lancelot and Queen Guinevere's forbidden love, the means they adopt to hide their affair from the king, although he already knows of it from Merlin. Yeah, Merlin tells him. See, Merlin keeps telling him shit. He probably shouldn't know, everything about the future, and its effect on Elaine, Lancelot's sometime lover, and the mother of his son Galahad. Galahad, you'll know if you know the lore that he's the one who finds the Holy Grail. Well, in some versions it's Percival, but most of the time it's Galahad, I believe. The Candle in the Wind, that's the fourth part, unites these narrative threads by telling how Mordred's hatred of his father and Sir Agravain's hatred of Lancelot caused the eventual downfall of Arthur, Guinevere, Lancelot, and the entire ideal kingdom of Camelot. The book begins as a quite light-hearted account of the young Arthur's adventures and King Pelinor's interminable search for the questing beast. Yeah, see, Pellinor is a character in the animated movie who appears just briefly telling Hector that the tournament's about to go on. He's a friend of Hector. And in the book, he's this guy, he's out in the forest searching for this questing beast all the time. This elusive creature that he's just been hunting basically all his life. Parts of The Sword and Stone read almost as a parody of Arthurian legend by virtue of White's prose style, which relies heavily on anachronisms. So yeah, some modern language I think is used in the books that make it kind of anachronistic. But that's partly because Merlin can see everything that happens in the future. He's been to the future. However, the tale gradually changes tone. The ill-made knight becomes more meditative, and the candle in the wind finds Arthur brooding over death and his legacy. Yeah, by the end of the book, he's old and decrepit, and Merlin's gone. Merlin's been, I think in this version, Merlin does get trapped by what's it, they changed the names in different versions. I believe it is Nimue who traps him in a stone in a cave. Yeah, and it's pretty consistent with other legends. Arthur grows from a fallible but inquisitive and enthusiastic youth to an individualized and psychologically complex man. Lancelot is no longer the handsome knight typical in the romances, but instead portrayed as the ugliest of Arthur's knights. He is also intensely introspective and obsessively insecure, traits which lead to bouts of self loathing. He seeks to overcome his flaws by becoming Arthur's greatest knight. See, these are like little changes. Well, I'd say little, but yeah, they're pretty big changes. Some of them to the characters from the original story to now to this one. Merlin lives through time backwards, making him a bumbling yet wise old man who's getting younger. He makes many anachronistic allusions to future events, including references to World War II, telegraphs, tanks, and an Austrian who plunged the civilized world into misery and chaos, referencing Hitler. Sir Galahad is not well liked by many of the knights as he is too, quote unquote, perfect. to the point of being inhuman. Sir Bors, whom White labels Sir Bors the misogynist, is depicted as so devoted to his religious convictions that he is willing to do harm to others and the world around him rather than risk sacrificing his purity. His holy goodness is juxtaposed with Sir Lancelot's worldly goodness, with many of the characters favoring Lancelot. So it's it's not entirely bleak like some other King Arthur stories. It has it does have its humorous moments, and it's a fantasy through and through, and I really the Sword and the Stone animated movie is one of my favorite Disney has ever done. Uh, I used to I used to freaking borrow it from the library all the time and watch it because we can never find we can never find the tape in the store, but and yeah, this is just oh, see, I'm reading through the at the end and it says, yeah, the film X2 2003 begins one scene with Magneto reading the first edition of the Once and Future King in his prison cell. And at the end of the film, yeah, Xavier is using the book as a teaching tool. Oh, they even referenced it in X-Men Apocalypse too. Xavier's reading lines from it with his students. So this book has endured like and I've seen it referenced in other things too before, like gargoyles. There's a whole storyline called the Once and Future King when King Arthur's awakened in Avalon, and even in the TV series Merlyn, where Merlyn's a young guy. He's got that bandana around his neck. You know what I'm talking about. Where the talking dragon he sees all the time. The Once and Future King is referenced in that too. So I I really enjoyed reading this. Like I think even I can't even more so than Lamort D'Arthur. Lamort D'Arthur was I don't know, by the end kind of depressing. I mean, this does have its depressing moments, like Arthur contemplating death, but he's still hopeful by the end. Like because according to Merlin, he's going to return someday, uh, and Camelot will come back. There'll be another round table, and but yeah, I love the characters in this. Archimedes, the owl, and Merlin especially, and then Arthur, of course. And I thought it was interesting the way they changed some of the characters up, like I said, Lancelot being a bit different. But yeah, especially if you have never read anything involving Arthur before, you should pick this up. It's a good first foray, I think, into this world. If not this, then I'd say Lamort D'Arthur or there's a really good book by Jane Yolen. I'll probably cover that one eventually. It's called Sword of the Rightful King. But yeah, that's all I have to say on this book, at least for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.